All right, have you ever heard of Aaron Ralston? Does that name ring a bell for you? Are you cool enough to know who that is? Aaron Ralston, he grew up in Ohio, but then at 12 years old, he moved with his family to Denver. And apparently, like everyone who lives in Denver or something, he fell in love with the mountains and skiing and hiking, all that sort of stuff. Great. Loved that as a kid. When he grew up, he went to college and he became an engineer, mechanical engineer for Intel. And he loved the job. He was good at it, very successful, doing great. But he just really got burned out with it. Like he just kind of got burned out with corporate America and dealing with all that. And so he decided just to go back to what he loved. He decided, I'm going to become a professional mountain climber. I'm like, oh, that sounds lucrative. Great, go for it, kid. But he did. That's what he did. This is where this story is going to sound a lot more familiar. In 2003, he was down in the Blue John Canyon in Utah, hiking there by himself, right, hiking alone. And while he was in a very narrow part of the canyons, a boulder dislodged above him and fell down, and it's trapped him, like it smashed his hand up against the canyon wall and just like pinched him right there, and he couldn't get out. Right? So he was stuck there. Nothing he could. He tried to rig something up like a pulley. He tried to smash this boulder. Like he tried a lot of things to set himself free, but he couldn't do it. Later, he wrote a book called, Stuck Between a Rock and a Hard Place. So fun. Sorry, I spoiled it. He got out. He wrote a book later called, Trapped Between a Rock and a Hard Place. You've probably heard of this as 127 hours. Nobody reads books no more. You watch the movie like I did. For 5 days, for 127 hours, he was trapped there, stuck. And at a certain point, about 2 days in, he said, he realized, there's only one way that I'm getting out of this thing alive. And that means I have to cut off I knew you knew it. I have to cut off my own arm. He realized I have to amputate my own arm. And I'm going to save you the very gory details of how that happened. You don't need that right now. But he did it. He cut off his own arm in order to free himself from that situation. Again, an incredible story. Amputated his own arm. The reason, though, that this became so famous, aside from he cut his own arm off, is it became famous because it was propped up as like just a hero story of the American myth, the American legends. Like this guy, he shows us the power of the human spirit. This is what humans can do. This is how you could too. You can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps like that guy did. You can do it by yourself. Why? He did it. He cut off his own arm. You can do things amazing too. Awesome. That's what we do. And that's why this story became so famous, is because it was just like the story of the American spirit. We can do anything we want. Right? The Greeks, they have their heroes, they have their legends. It's like what? Who are the Greeks' legends? Perseus, Odysseus, those guys, Hercules. Right? The Brits, they have King Arthur, they have Robin Hood, people like that. Great. Americans, we have George Washington and Aaron Ralston, the guy who cut his arm off. It's like, look at that guy. But this, again, I think this is just where we often, and this is how we often see ourselves, is we are just kind of this isolated person thing. We are kind of the hero of our own story. It's just us. We've got ourselves, and that's also kind of how we're rewarded and kind of incentivized growing up. Like all growing up, you were taught, I was taught, we were even either explicitly or implicitly, we were taught to just kind of learn to do things on our own. And there's some good things to that. Again, your parents loved you so much, they're like, you need to learn to do things on your own. I'm not going to buy your groceries for you the rest of your life, right? You need to do things. So there's some good in this. Your parents love you, and so they teach you to be independent and things like that. That's good. Also, like, I'm not even trying to bash working hard. Some people think I bash working hard. Like, no, sometimes you have to pull, I was telling my people in Bushton this morning, sometimes it's 3 a.m. and you got to pull a cow out. Like, you got to pull a calf out. Like, it happens. So I'm not bashing, like, people that need to work hard, and there's hard things that you got to do. That's very true. What I'm talking about is with that same attitude of I have to do things myself, I have to do things, we then also begin to slide into this mentality that, but I have to do everything, and it's just me, and I'm all alone, and it's just me that I can rely on. It's my isolated little self. I'm the hero here. It's only me that I can count on. And although, again, working hard and doing hard things that's a very important part of life, we also then begin to slide into this place of isolation, and isolation destroys us. Like simple examples, like during COVID, you were all fine during COVID, I'm sure, but for some people, the isolation during COVID, it destroyed them, it wrecked them. Even just like good things. I was talking to a new mom once, and she was talking about just the great joy of having her new little baby, and it was great, but then she was also talking about how it destroyed her because she was all alone. for 10 hours, 12 hours a day, and she felt inadequate, and she felt like, I have to be the one to take care of this kid. It's all on me. So again, you wouldn't think like having a baby can do this, but even that, like that really would, for her was a very terrible, rough experience. Or even, again, you just think of being in a situation where you do something stupid and you're very embarrassed by it, you feel really ashamed about it, so much so that you can't even tell your spouse, you can't even tell your best friend, and you're just like, I just don't want anyone to know, whatever. And so you just feel alone, and you're just kind of isolated in that. That wrecks us. That's not good for us. But that's that same mentality, that it's just me. I'm this isolated thing. Again, there's some good things to it, but it turns pretty destructive pretty fast. Why? Because we're not meant to operate in isolation. We just weren't. We weren't built for that. And even though I understand that more than you can imagine, it's very harmful for us. So what if there was another way besides just saying, I'll figure everything out on my own? Okay, take a look at the gospel today. Very famous scene. Jesus is at the wedding feast of Cana. We all know this scene, right? Because we're all Catholic. Why do we know this scene? Proves that we can drink, Father. Jesus did it, so can I. That's why every Catholic knows the wedding feast of Cana. Good job, okay. But notice a couple of things. Right? This isn't, John the evangelist didn't tell us this scene to be like, hey, look at this party trick that Jesus knows, water to wine. That'd be nice, right? That's not why John tells us. Notice a couple things. First thing, this couple, the family throwing the party, they've reached a limit. They've reached a human limit. They're out of wine. It's very simple, but it's a very real limit. They can't just go down to Johnson's and get some more booze. They're out. Nothing left. And so the reason that it's such a crisis is because they can't go get more. And so it's, again, the world's not over, but it's a very real problem, very real limit. They can't even chop off their arm. There's nothing they can do. It is an impossible situation. Absolutely nothing they can do about it. Okay. Call it what it is. Second thing, notice what happens is Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary intercedes. She recognizes the problem and she intercedes. She goes to her son and asks him to do something about it. And even though Jesus, he doesn't seem super interested in this, Mary tells the servers, just do whatever he tells you. So what's Mary doing? Again, think. Mary's encouraging them to place their faith in her son. She's saying, you can trust him. I told him to do it. Trust him. She says, entrust whatever your problem is to him. He'll take care of it. Just do whatever he tells you. Also, side note, super side note, these are Mary's last words in the Bible. So the church fathers love to point out that the very last thing that Mary tells you is to do whatever Jesus tells you to do. So the church fathers love to point that out of like, that's Mary's last words to you. Do whatever he tells you. Okay, side note over. Okay, then what happens? What then happens is Jesus responds. Jesus responds to the situation, but he responds overabundantly. Something like 150 gallons of wine. That's a party. Let's go. Right? No, Jesus overabundantly responds to the problem at hand. And he also responds with a real transformation. It's not like he convinces them that they need something else. It's not like he says, well, this kind of tastes like wine. Try that. No, there's a miraculous, an unforeseen, something happens. Unforeseen, totally unexpected. A real transformation takes place. And then, it wasn't in the gospel today. It makes me so mad. So this gospel is from the beginning of the second chapter of John's gospel, but it just starts off, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. Actually, it starts off on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. I don't know why they cut that. It's very important for this scene. Anyway, on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. What else happens on the third day? Right, you're good Catholics. Jesus rose from the dead. Nice. So what John is trying to do is he's trying to point our attention to say, yeah, Jesus' party trick. But no, he's saying, look, this happened on the third day. This is connected to this newness of life, the resurrected life that Jesus offers. Okay, what John is doing, John the evangelist, in this very simple scene, he's trying to point out to us and make clear, this is not just a magic trick by Jesus. John is trying to point out and to say, look, this Jesus, if you take your situation to him, if you take whatever it is to him, whatever impossible situation you find yourself in, if you take it to him in faith, if you do what he tells you, he can respond. Overabundantly, he can respond, miraculously transform the situation. He has the power, he has the capability to do that. That's the point that John's trying to make. Okay, so then make it applicable, apply it to your own life, figure out what's going on for you. You have to think first then, where are those places where you feel trapped? Where are you stuck between a rock and a hard place? Right? What are those things in your life where you've run up against your human limit to figure it out on your own? Again, America tells you, well, better keep trying. You're all alone, kid. Keep going. You'll figure out, hope, maybe. Cut your own arm off. Maybe that'll do it. But no, where have you run up against your limit? Or, where have you found that, you've decided to cut your own arm off? You're like, well, I'll just live half alive because I don't want to deal with that thing anymore. And this isn't about work. This isn't about your kids either. I know you're about to blame it on your kids and be like, well, Father, if my kid did this, my life would be better. We're not talking about your kids or work or your spouse. We're talking about you, okay? You. What's going on within you where you've reached that limit? Many of us, all of us, don't kid yourself. All of us are walking around with something in our life, something from the past, some brokenness that we have, something that we've learned just to deal with. Many of you, if I put you up here, you could tell us just harrowing stories of suffering that you've endured. It would make our hair curl. Some of you could stand up here and tell us stories of terrible things you've done. That would make our hair curl. Some of you could stand up here and share with us about things that you still carry with you, whether that's, again, addictions, whether that's just hurts from the past that you've just learned, I just got to carry this with me my whole life, I guess. Those are real things, very real situations, very real places where we've reached our limit. And typically what happens is this. We learn either one, to live with it, and so we just distract ourselves from it, so we work way more, or we say, well, I'll just focus on my kids now, or there's this thing, it's called football. You ever heard of that? That's a great thing. Football's a great distraction for us. 15 hours on a Sunday, whoo, it's a great thing. What are we going to do next week when there's no football? Oh my goodness. We distract ourselves from it. Or another thing we learn to do is we just learn to medicate it. Right? Yeah, sometimes we use drugs or something, but typically these days we love Netflix. We love the news. We love food. We love the many ways that we self-medicate these days. But what it reduces to is this. Either we say, there's nothing that's ever going to happen. I just have to learn to live with it. Nothing I can do. Get over it. Or we chop it off. And we just say, I'll live crippled the rest of my life. I'll live a half existence because there's nothing else that I can do. That's typically what we do, one of those two options, whatever it looks like practically, but that's what we do. Okay, what if there was actually someone who could respond to that situation, overabundantly respond to that situation, really transform that situation? Would that sound good? Would that be something that interests us? Would you do what that person told you to do? This spring, so the last couple of springs, I'm a crazy person. We've done those things we did 2 years ago. We did rerouting. You remember that traumatic experience? It was rough. Then the year after that, we did reconnecting. Rerouting was just simply diving into the gospel message. Beautiful. Last year, we just did reconnecting, which was a dive into prayer, a life of prayer. This spring, drum roll. Just kidding, don't do that. This spring, we're going to do a series called Renewing. I love my R words. Renewing. Right? Renewing is going to be a very, very simple but very, very beautiful, profound journey to discover and to experience the healing power that Jesus Christ can work within our lives. I'm not going to spoil it all today. It's way too early to do that. I would have nothing to talk about for a month. But simply put, what Jesus comes to do, right? Everywhere that Jesus goes, he preaches the gospel, we're told, and he heals. He would go into a town, preach the good news, and heal the people there. When Jesus sent out the apostles, he said, go preach the good news and heal those people. So as the church points out to us, the message and the work of healing, it's essentially linked to our faith and to the news of the gospel. The point is this. The point is that Jesus, he doesn't just want you to deal with it. Right? Jesus doesn't want you to just deal with and figure out whatever's going on. He doesn't want you to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps or distract yourself from it, isolate yourself. That's none of that. Jesus wants to heal you. He does. The question is, do you want to be healed? I know it sounds far-fetched. I really know that it sounds far-fetched because, again, we've learned just to deal with it typically. But I think it sounds more far-fetched that this dude turned 150 gallons of water into wine. That's pretty far-fetched. So maybe he can actually do something helpful within our own life, within our own spirit. Okay. Last thing, Aaron Ralston, he's not a bad dude. He's a great dude. I'm not trying to paint him as an evil villain. He actually he's now a motivational speaker, because what else do you do if you cut your own arm off? You're like, look at me, kids. All right, so he's a motivational speaker, but one of the things that he'll talk about is, that day I lost my hand, but I gained my life back. And he goes on just to talk about just the real change that happened within his own life because of that experience. Okay, I think this is key for us because often we think that, again, these wounds, the places that were broken in our life, we try to avoid them, and yet those are actually the places where God can work most powerfully, most potently in our life. And I think I'm right on that because every single Sunday we come here, and that's what we celebrate. That by Jesus' own wounds, his own brokenness, we were saved. We say that every Good Friday. By his wounds, we were healed. That's the core message of the gospel. And so I think I really just want to encourage you this spring, just right now, just to put that in the back of your head. I'll have so much more information to come. But just to put that in the back of your brain for now, and just to kind of begin to let that grow. Where is it in my life that I need that healing that Jesus Christ can offer me? What are those places? What is that impossible situation that I need to take to him? That I need to do whatever he tells me to do so that I can experience that overabundance of a solution he can provide, that real renewal of my life that he can work within me.